The wind off the Atlantic carried the smell of salt and pine, a mingling of ocean and forest that was both wild and untamed. In the summer of 1587, a small group of English settlers stepped onto the sandy shore of Roanoke Island, their boots sinking into the warm, shifting earth. They were 115 souls in total, men, women, and children, all filled with hope, determination, and the dream of building a new life in this distant world. Among them was Eleanor Dare, heavily pregnant, her hand resting protectively over her belly. Within weeks, she would give birth to the first English child born in the New World, Virginia Dare. The colony was meant to be England's foothold in North America, a permanent settlement on this edge of the wilderness. Sir Walter Raleigh had organized the voyage, and the settlers came with tools, supplies, and an ambitious plan. But the reality they faced was harsher than they had imagined. The forests pressed close, filled with unfamiliar sounds at night. Food was scarce, and relationships with nearby native tribes were fragile at best. Still, they worked, building homes, planting crops, and marking their presence in this strange new land. As summer waned, the colony's governor, John White, knew supplies were running dangerously low. The settlers urged him to return to England to gather what they needed: food, tools, clothing, promising they would endure until his return. White set sail across the Atlantic in late 1587, fully expecting to be back within months. But fate had other plans. England was soon embroiled in war with Spain, and every available ship was needed to defend against the Spanish Armada. White's pleas for a vessel to return to Roanoke were repeatedly denied. It would be 3 long years before he could make the journey back to the island. When at last he returned in August 1590, the colony was silent. The settlement stood abandoned, eerily still beneath the swaying pines. Houses had been dismantled, fences taken down, and not a single settler was in sight. There were no signs of struggle, no graves, no bodies. It was as though 115 people had simply vanished. The only clue was a single word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. Another carving, simply the letters CRO, was found on a nearby tree. Before White had left, he and the colonists had agreed that if they were forced to move, they would carve a message indicating their destination, and if danger had driven them away, they would add a cross. There was no cross here, only the word. White took it as a sign that the colonists had moved to CROATOAN Island, now known as Hatteras Island, home to a friendly native tribe. But fierce storms forced his ship back to sea before he could investigate. He never saw the settlers, his daughter, or his granddaughter again. And so began one of the oldest unsolved mysteries in American history. Theories abound. Some historians believe the colonists integrated with the Croatoan tribe, their English identity dissolving into native culture over generations. Archaeological finds on Hatteras Island, fragments of English tools and weapons, lend some weight to this idea. Others suspect the settlers met a more violent fate, perhaps at the hands of less friendly tribes or even Spanish forces moving up from Florida. There are darker possibilities still. Starvation, disease, or conflict could have decimated their numbers, leaving survivors to scatter into the wilderness. Some point to strange reports from later English colonists in Virginia who spoke of fair-skinned, gray-eyed natives claiming English ancestry. Was this the faint echo of Roanoke's people? And then, of course, there are the whispers, tales of curses, of restless spirits guarding the island, of a place where those who settle are fated to disappear. In modern times, the name Roanoke has become synonymous with vanishing without explanation. A ghost story woven into the fabric of American legend. Standing on Roanoke Island today, the forest feels older than time itself. Spanish moss sways in the breeze, and the ground is soft with centuries of fallen leaves. The air hums with cicadas, and if you listen closely, you might swear you hear voices, faint, almost lost in the wind. The empty space where the colony once stood feels heavy with absence, as though the land itself remembers. Perhaps the settlers found safety and lived on, far from where history could follow them. Perhaps they perished in hardship, their stories erased by time. Or perhaps, as some like to imagine, they simply stepped into the unknown, into a place beyond the reach of any ship or map. 4 centuries later, the lost colony still keeps its secrets. And maybe that's why the mystery endures. Because in a world where so much can be explained, Roanoke refuses to give us closure. It invites us to wonder, to imagine, and to feel that same haunting pull toward the unknown. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of America's oldest unsolved mysteries. But now, I'd love to hear from you. What do you believe happened to the lost colony? Were they rescued, destroyed, or did they choose a fate we can't yet understand? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I truly love reading your theories. And if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, please like, comment, and share. It truly helps keep these stories alive. Until next time, keep wondering and keep searching.